Now, with all the stories making the headlines this Friday night, it's the ITV News at 10.
The case against two former soldiers accused of murder during Northern Ireland's Troubles collapses. One of them, Soldier F, was accused over the deaths of two men on Bloody Sunday. Their families say him walking free is a damning indictment of British justice.
We were hoping to get this boy in the court. Just disappointment.
Also in News at 10 tonight. Relief for Labour after the sister of murdered MP Jo Cox wins by the narrowest of margins in the Batley and Spen by-election. A change of tune by Angela Merkel as she says Brits who have been fully vaccinated will be able to travel to Germany without quarantining on return. No more Murray mania, Sir Andy is out of Wimbledon in a straight sets defeat. Less than 24 hours to go before the game of their lives. The England team are in Rome and ready for tomorrow. And
chance for England, Sterling is there again!
Pride and joy. The couple who cared for Raheem Sterling when he was a teenager at Liverpool, but knew from the start that he would be a national star.
We knew from the very beginning. He used to go on to the other lads about what you should do, and you're a bit lazy, you should be moving quicker.
This is ITV News at 10 with Rageh Omaar.
Good evening. For almost half a century, the families of 13 people shot dead in Northern Ireland on Bloody Sunday have never wavered in pursuing justice for their loved ones. 2 years ago, much to their disappointment, they were told just one former soldier, Soldier F, was to be prosecuted for the murder of two men. That disappointment grew today when the case against him was dropped, as was the prosecution of another veteran known as Soldier B, who had been charged with killing 15-year-old Daniel Hegarty during a British Army operation in Londonderry in 1972. All this follows the collapse of a different Troubles murder trial of British soldiers in May, where key evidence was thrown out. Fear of a similar outcome led to today's decision. The families called it a damning indictment of the British justice system.
It started with a civil rights march. But this Sunday would become Bloody Sunday. And of the many dark days of the Troubles, few were darker than this one in 1972. After decades of campaigning by the families of those killed, a man known as Soldier F was accused of murdering two of them, James Ray and William McKinney. Today in Derry, their families were told the case had been dropped.
We were hoping to get this boy in the court. Just disappointment.
I mean, does this feel like injustice? Does this feel like,
Oh, absolutely. Of course, it's not justice.
And for all the talk of carrying on, for some this is it.
We made a decision that in the legal remedies, that's the end of it for us. We're not going to pursue any other futile legal processes.
And another case was also dropped today, the prosecution of Soldier B for the murder of 15-year-old Daniel Hegarty. It's become one of the longest investigations in UK criminal history. An official inquiry just months after Bloody Sunday supported the soldiers' version that they were returning fire. After 20 years of bitter dispute, the bereaved families launched a campaign for justice, but it took almost 2 decades before the Savile inquiry found there was no justification for the shootings, and another 9 years before it was announced that Soldier F would be prosecuted for 2 murders. And a month later, the prosecution of Soldier B for a later shooting was also announced. This isn't just about the past, it's about the future too. It's about what to do about the prosecution of veterans in unresolved cases like these. Because as the alleged perpetrators grow old and die, the families
of victims of such incidents say that their trauma endures.
But the government is under some pressure to end the prosecution of veterans.
And of course, veterans' lives have been decimated in the process. So I think it's another sad day in Northern Ireland. I think that the people of Northern Ireland deserve better. I think veterans deserve better.
In the place known by some as Derry, by others as Londonderry, an outcome which satisfied all was always difficult. But this has not only dissatisfied but devastated some, who will now seek a judicial review. Rageh, News at 10.
To politics now, and it says a lot about the state of our politics that Labour winning in Batley and Spen, a seat they've held since 1997, took some people by surprise. Yet win they did, albeit by just 323 votes, with Kim Leadbeater claiming the seat previously held by her sister Jo Cox, who was murdered by a right-wing extremist. It's a result which will be a great relief for the party's leader, Sir Keir Starmer, who boldly declared Labour is back.
She certainly did. The sister of the murdered MP, Jo Cox, winning in the same seat, against the odds and in the face of some ugly abuse. Keir Starmer condemned that as he celebrated with her.
Labour is back. This is just the start. I want many more days like this. Labour is coming home.
This is a victory for Kim, not Keir, isn't it?
It's a victory for the whole Labour movement. It's a special victory.
But it was a very narrow victory, hardly a vindication of your leadership.
It's a huge victory for Batley and Spen.
For Kim Leadbeater, even standing in the constituency once held by her late sister took courage. How much does it mean to you, given that your late sister represented this community?
It's very emotional for me, for obvious reasons. But, you know, Jo would be extremely proud of me, and I'm really clear if I can be half the MP that she was, then that'll be pretty good going.
The Tories insist their chances of turning this West Yorkshire town blue were always slim.
I would say that actually we fought an incredibly positive, Brian Stevenson fought an incredibly positive campaign, and all things considered did very well to reduce a long-standing Labour majority, several decades old.
But at this gym in Batley, some say the Tories are no longer pulling in the same direction as the country after the Matt Hancock scandal.
It just kind of makes you think, what's the point in us doing everything that we're doing for them then to do whatever they want to do, whereas we've been sticking to the rules, trying to get ourselves out of this situation, and it feels like they're not doing the same.
So that could be a reason why people stuck with Labour?
Yeah, definitely.
Others feel Keir Starmer needs to make more of an effort.
And it's to create a better opposition. We've for what's going on in the last 18 months, they haven't been strong enough at Labour through this pandemic. Standing up to Boris Johnson.
Still, if it hadn't been for George Galloway, a former Labour MP who stood hoping to unseat Keir Starmer, Labour's majority would have been much higher. Far from being curtains for Keir, this by-election has given him another chance. Libby Vina, News at 10, Batley.
It's becoming increasingly evident that the COVID vaccines are working. For while cases are rising, hospitalisations remain low, something which will be on Boris Johnson's mind as he mulls easing England's restrictions this month. Paying close attention to are foreign leaders pondering travel rules. Leaders like Angela Merkel, who made her 22nd and final visit to Britain as Chancellor today. She had wanted EU countries to adopt a hard line on UK arrivals, but today her tone was markedly different. She tellingly said anyone double jabbed should be able to avoid quarantine in the foreseeable future.
Arriving at Windsor Castle for tea with the Queen, one traveller who won't have to quarantine when she returns to Germany.
So you've been seeing the Prime Minister?
Yes.
In Chequers. So you flew with the helicopter? Nice day. Wonderful day.
At Chequers, Angela Merkel had signalled that travellers from Britain to Germany would soon no longer have to quarantine.
We think that in a foreseeable future, those who have received double jabs will then, according to our classification, and now right now Britain obviously is a high incidence area, will be able to travel again without having to go into quarantine.
This also suggests the end of German attempts to persuade other EU holiday destinations to quarantine British travellers. Of course, it's not just Germany that has strict travel restrictions.
We also have very tough restrictions. I mean, restrictions on people coming from Germany at the present time. And that's quite right. You'd expect us to have the toughest possible measures to stop the disease arriving in this country.
But the UK is also working on ending quarantine for those with 2 jabs. Although the headlines here at Chequers have been good for anyone with 2 jabs still hoping to travel, the details of when they might actually be able to do that remain elusive. Although on the British side there is at least speculation that the quarantine restrictions could be dropped by the 26th of July. But Janine Berger wants to go to Germany much sooner. Her father's funeral is next week.
It's very, very hard for me to not be able to go because it was my dad who raised me and was there for me when I needed him, and not to be able to go when he needs me, it's very, very heartbreaking.
As the Prime Minister waved Chancellor Merkel off from Chequers, both will have known there are more than just holidays at stake in their deliberations. Carl Dinnan, News at 10, Buckinghamshire.
There has been some alarm today over suggestions that up to 5 million Britons could be barred from travelling in the EU, even if they are double jabbed. It came after it emerged that batches of the AstraZeneca vaccine made by the Serum Institute in India have not been approved by Europe's regulator, despite being the same as other doses. But officials said it should simply be an administrative hurdle. Now, if England's dream that football really is coming home after an eternity away is to come true, they first need to bring it back from the Eternal City. The Three Lions are 3 games from glory, the first tomorrow in Rome, a city steeped in history where they'll need to show some gladiatorial spirit against an unfancied Ukraine side who will be up for the fight. And unlike against Germany, there will be no army of fans cheering them on.
Leaving home for the first and only time during their Euros adventure. Spoilt so far by home crowds, could new, unfamiliar surroundings upset their momentum?
I think it's good for us to have to go away. It's a different stimulus for us, it's a different focus, different sort of challenge. We're going to have to generate everything ourselves, but it can breed a real sort of togetherness and spirit, which can add to what we've already got within the group.
Arriving tonight in Rome just 24 hours before a game they're expected to win. But complacency is the enemy of success, and this squad knows that for many of them, if they don't take this chance, they might never get another one.
We go into every game obviously respecting our opposition, but we've got to focus on ourselves mainly. We've got to focus on ourselves and the performance and reach a level which is more than capable of winning the football match, and that's the main focus. If we focus on ourselves and make sure the mentality is right and we make sure the performance is right, we give ourselves a great opportunity of going through to the semi-final.
Due to COVID restrictions preventing the usual travelling hordes, expats are being urged to get a ticket and make some noise tomorrow night.
Ironically, I think it'll be a small collection of English fans and lots of German fans, because there are lots of Germans in the city who plan to go to the game, so ironically it will be us and the Germans cheering on England.
There's a group of us here. There's quite a few English people here, so we're talking about supporting England from here, from Rome.
Joel Phillips lives in Hamburg, but jumped at the chance to get to the game.
I had a dive on and there were some tickets available, so straight away I just bought one, and yeah, I'm just trying to sort of figure everything else out as I go along. I still don't know where I'm staying yet, but we'll find a way when we get there.
While the atmosphere in Rome can't possibly match what engulfed England during the win over Germany, what potentially lies ahead will surpass it.
The prize for beating Ukraine is not just a semi-final, it's a semi-final at home in front of 65,000 fans. That would make it the biggest crowd at a sporting event in the UK for 15 months. So if England falls short tomorrow night, it will be a huge missed opportunity.
All England's previous competitive matches against Ukraine have either been drawn or won by the odd goal. So any fans expecting a comfortable evening stroll in Rome tomorrow have probably got a shock coming. Steve Scott, News at 10.
We certainly do, and we can speak now to GERAINT, who is in Rome for the match tomorrow. GERAINT, well, not long now, I guess.
No, Rageh, and there is a big game atmosphere in Rome tonight. It's just that it doesn't have anything to do with tomorrow's game. It's all to do with that brilliant victory by Italy over the Belgians in Munich a bit earlier. There are not thousands of English fans in Rome this evening enjoying the beer and dancing in the Trevi fountain, because this is still a country, of course, trying to control a pandemic which has taken a terrible toll here. So the Italian authorities have been very clear that the 5-day quarantine period, which applies to all arrivals from the UK, will be strictly enforced. They've even taken steps to get UEFA to cancel any tickets for this game that were sold in the UK. As Steve was mentioning, there are some expats, English expats in Italy, who'll be going to the match. I understand around 2,500 tickets have been sold to English people living here. I don't know how much noise they're going to make, or if any of them know the words to "Football's Coming Home." We'll find out tomorrow evening.
We certainly will. GERAINT in Rome, thanks very much. And still to come, statues of Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth torn down in Canada. Wimbledon woes, Andy Murray and Dan Evans both out of the championship. That's when we come back. Welcome back. Canada Day is traditionally a moment of celebration akin to July the 4th in the United States. But this year, though, it had a more muted feel. The nation in shock following the discovery of hundreds of unmarked graves at residential schools which Indigenous children were forced to attend. It was under Queen Victoria's reign that practice began, and protesters turned their outrage on the royals yesterday, toppling statues of her and the current Queen.
They are fueled by an anger that has inflamed generations, downing statues of the Queen and those who went before her. Monarchs who reigned during the darkest part of Canada's past, when those who were first on this land were seen as a stain upon it by those who sought a future without them.
More unmarked graves had been found near a former residential school. To everyone in Ktunaxa Nation and to all survivors, families, and Indigenous people, we're here for you.
It is for what happened in schools like this that Justin Trudeau speaks. Places designed by the country's first Prime Minister to take the Indian out of the child. It was a horrific principle. The practice was worse. Over 2 centuries in the apparent care of Catholic nuns and priests, thousands of Indigenous children disappeared, brutalised, neglected, left to die or killed, then buried in unmarked graves. Human rights groups say what happened is a genocide.
There are children that have never returned home, and we cannot have that in any society, any country around us, especially Canada is supposed to be a first world country. You know, and we cannot have these type of things go on. It's like your children, sending your children to school today and not knowing where they are if they don't return. You know, what would happen then? It's crimes against humanity in our case.
The schools were open until the 1970s. Now, excavation work in their grounds is discovering the bodies of their pupils. An orange marker per child in a country which has for so long prided itself on a reputation which belies what is hidden in its past. Emma Murphy, News at 10.
Back here, a High Court ruling any day now could well change the lives of some of the most vulnerable people in our society. Jodie Whiting was a disabled mum who took her own life after her benefits were stopped. She'd been judged fit for work. Her family say she wasn't. They want mistakes they claim were made by the Department
because
for
both
Work
sides
and
do
Pensions
need
in taking that decision to be laid before a second inquest into Jodie's death. And ITV News has uncovered evidence of other similar cases. Their families also say benefit assessments should be done in a more caring way. If not, they say, more deaths will follow.
She said, I want peace. Well, it broke us all.
Angry, angry and angry. But the system stinks.
Jodie Whiting's mum and dad believe a callous system helped kill their daughter. She took her own life after her benefits were stopped.
I found letters where she'd wrote and says, no money, can't pay bills, I can't breathe. This is the life of Jodie Whiting. She just gave up hope.
Jodie has survived years of serious ill health, but when she was hospitalised by pneumonia, the Department of Work and Pensions declared her fit to work.
It was unbelievable. She cried. She said, Mum, what am I going to do? I can't walk out the door. I can't breathe.
Officials pursued Jodie and her distraught family even after her death.
She was laid in the Undertaker's. They sent her letter saying, you're fit to work. And how do you think that made us feel? Saying your daughter's fit to work while she's laid in the Undertaker's.
Jodie's family believe a second inquest would apportion some blame to the DWP for their daughter's death. And this is far from an isolated tragedy. The National Audit Office has found 69 suicides of benefit claimants. There may be more, because far too often families agonise in silence.
It still feels just as raw as it did on the day.
Helen Featherstone has never before spoken publicly about her son's suicide.
We found him lying there on his bed that afternoon, and I didn't know whether he was just asleep, and I touched his arm and he was cold.
Her bright-eyed boy, who'd wanted to be a doctor, in adolescence sank into a crippling depression, yet his benefits were halved after an official assessment.
It was just tick box questions. We had these sores, open wounds that were infected, and they were getting him to walk up and down and do things like that, and they had no idea what was underneath his clothing and that he was suffering terrible, terrible pain. They don't care about people like me, Mum, he said.
2 months after Keir's death, 2 months too late, the DWP wrote to restore his payments.
He was vulnerable and he just needed that help and that care. And they took his lifeline away, really.
The DWP told us its priority is a compassionate service for claimants. In the vast majority of cases this happens, it said. But when, sadly, there is a tragic case, we take it very seriously, learn lessons and make changes. But campaigners say fundamental reform is long overdue.
We need both a significant overhaul of the current benefit system and an independent regulator that monitors the effectiveness of the DWP.
There's loads of people like Jodie. Every day of every week there's people suffering.
Jodie's family say a more humane system would be a worthy legacy after her difficult life and premature death. John Ray, News at 10.
Our investigation into the appalling conditions some people are being forced to live in has now prompted not one, but 2 investigations by the government. Its regulator of social housing is to look into Eastfields Estate in South London, which is run by Clarion, the UK's biggest housing association. We saw evidence there of damp and mouldy homes, some infested with rodents. Clarion subsequently apologised to residents. It's the second time in 3 months the regulator has intervened following our investigation. The senior government minister Michael Gove and his wife, the journalist Sarah Vine, are to separate after almost 20 years of marriage. A spokesman for the couple said they are in the process of finalising their divorce. Mr Gove and Mrs Vine, a columnist for the Daily Mail, married in 2001 and have 2 children. Andy Murray has really put the centre court crowd through the ringer this week. His battling performances in the first 2 rounds at Wimbledon have had them biting their nails and on their feet. Sadly for him, it was third time unlucky as he crashed out in straight sets tonight.
Another late night, another centre court battle for Andy Murray, one of 3 British men through to the 3rd round at Wimbledon. That hasn't happened since 1999. And there were high hopes for his continued comeback. But against the 10th seed Denis Shapovalov, the Scot got off on the wrong foot. 2 slips led to a change of shoes. Murray was slow to find his feet, and despite every effort to fight back, the first and second sets fell to the Canadian.
It's 2 sets to love.
The pause to close the roof on centre court had this week proved a turning point in Murray's matches.
And that is the end of that.
But this evening, it was not to be. 3 matches in 5 days, proving too much. Murray knocked out in straight sets by Shapovalov.
Obviously, since I had the operation, you know, never really been able to get that much momentum going. You know, and for me to be able to compete with guys of his level, you know, my game needs to be spot on.
Only 2 years ago, Murray was having surgery to resurface his hip. Even to get this far has been astonishing, according to BBC commentator Annabel Croft.
I don't think he knew himself what he was capable of, but we've always known he's a great warrior, he's a great fighter, he's like Braveheart out there on the centre court. It's been absolutely jaw-dropping tennis.
On centre court, they were spoilt for choice this afternoon. Before Murray, British #1 Dan Evans was up against Sebastian Korda. But over 5 sets, Evans was outclassed by the American, who turns 21 on Monday. And so the departure of Britain's biggest hitters leaves all hopes on Cam Norrie and Emma Raducanu tomorrow. Murray is out, frustrated, but now knows how much work lies ahead if his comeback is to continue. Martha Fairley, News at 10, Wimbledon.
Still on sports, but back to the Euros now, and Switzerland's fairy tale journey came to an end tonight. Reduced to 10 men, they took Spain all the way, but after knocking out world champions France on penalties, it was their turn to feel the pain of losing a shootout. Spain, meanwhile, held their nerve to progress to the semi-finals. And there they will meet Italy, who have been on fine form and tonight knocked out the world's top-ranked side, Belgium, beating them 2-1. And finally, as a schoolboy, Raheem Sterling grew up a stone's throw from the Wembley arch under which his goals have propelled England into the quarter-finals. But when he was just 15, he moved to play football in Liverpool and lived with a family who cared for him and who he still keeps in touch with. They told us of their abiding affection and connection to him and how he deserves every single bit of success which is bringing him to the nation with such joy.
Oh, he's done it again.
The whole of England is celebrating Raheem Sterling's goal-scoring heroics.
Big chance for England. Sterling is there again. From England's hero, Raheem Sterling.
But few can be prouder than the couple who took the boy who'd become a star into their home. Raheem Sterling was just 15 when he left North London to join Liverpool's academy. For 3 years, Peter and Sandra Reeves were foster parents to a youngster whose talent was undeniable.
We knew from the very beginning.
We knew.
He used to go on to the other lads about what you should do, and you're a bit lazy, you should be moving quicker, you should be doing this, you should be doing that.
They still remember the first time they saw him play in a youth match.
Yeah, honestly, Anfield, 5 goals he scored. It was absolutely brilliant. Now we were jumping off our seat. And the 5th went in, you know, and everybody was buzzing about it, you know.
Sterling, in the centre here, became part of the family.
You do. You take him to the doctors and the dentist and any clinic appointments.
Now they're just delighted the whole nation sees what they always knew.
I've even cheered for him when he played for City, you know.
What does it feel like watching him now?
It's wonderful. It is absolutely wonderful because he deserves this.
Yeah.
And the respectful boy they looked after still keeps in touch, even in the middle of a tournament.
And you're still hearing from him from inside
the England camp.
Fancy him texting us today. To say, you know, which was lovely.
That's tremendous. He is enjoying this, isn't he?
Oh, well, so he should be. You've got to relish it.
I just hope he carries on, you know.
This weekend, millions of followers of English football are also hoping Sterling's outstanding tournament continues. But how many can rightfully claim they were part of the team that launched a star? Paul Davis, News at 10, Merseyside.
What a lovely story about a young man who has captured the nation's imagination, and let's hope he does that tomorrow. That's it for tonight. Whatever the result in football, have a great weekend. Good night.